Buried beneath the mountains of Afghanistan lies a treasure that could rival the oil fields of Saudi Arabia, $1 trillion in untapped minerals. It's enough to build a future for generations of Afghans, and enough to transform one of the poorest countries on earth into a modern, thriving economy. But for the people living there, this immense wealth isn't a blessing. It's a curse. A treasure locked away by a brutal regime, international isolation, and some of the most treacherous terrain on the planet. How can a nation sitting on $1 trillion jackpot remain trapped in poverty? The big reveal, unveiling the treasure. Let's start with a number so big it almost sounds fake. $1 trillion. That's the conservative estimate from the US Geological Survey for the value of Afghanistan's mineral deposits. Afghan officials themselves have claimed the real number could be 3 times higher. We're talking about a huge range of resources. There are vast deposits of iron ore, the backbone of any industrial society. There are mountains of copper, essential for everything from power cables to electronics. The Mez-Aynak deposit alone is considered one of the largest untouched copper reserves on the planet. And of course there's gold, bauxite, and a whole collection of rare earth elements, the lifeblood of our 21st century civilization. And then there's the mineral that has earned Afghanistan a stunning nickname, the Saudi Arabia of lithium. Lithium is the critical component in the batteries for our smartphones, laptops, and electric cars. As the world races toward a green energy transition, the demand for lithium is projected to grow more than 40 times by 2040. Afghanistan is sitting on a jackpot. On paper, this is a golden ticket. It's a clear path to self-sufficiency, a way to fund schools, hospitals, and roads, and finally, break the cycle of war and poverty that has defined the nation for decades. But the reality on the ground tells a very different story. A story of obstacles so immense they seem insurmountable. The Curse, Part 1. The Tyranny of Geography and Neglect. The first lock on this treasure chest is the land itself. Afghanistan is a country of extreme geography. Towering, jagged mountain ranges and vast, unforgiving deserts make just getting to these mineral deposits a monumental challenge. Building the infrastructure required for modern mining, like roads, railways, and power grids, is extraordinarily difficult and expensive. This isn't a new problem. Despite billions invested by international donors after 2001, critical projects remain unfinished or have fallen into disrepair. The Great Ring Road, a highway meant to connect the country's major cities, is a perfect example. A broken circle, with huge stretches of road in terrible condition. And the country's railway system? It's a tiny collection of disconnected cross-border tracks, totaling maybe 150 kilometers, completely unlinked to any major markets or mining sites. Construction projects have faced staggering delays, bogged down by security threats, corruption, and logistical nightmares. It's one thing to know the treasure is there, it's another thing entirely to get it out of the ground and to the sea. Without functioning roads, without a real railway, and without a reliable power supply, the cost of extraction skyrockets. It makes even the most promising deposits economically unviable. And under the current regime, the chances of building this vital infrastructure are bleaker than ever. The Curse, Part 2. A regime of isolation and ideology. The second, and maybe the most formidable, lock on Afghanistan's wealth is the Taliban. Since their return to power in 2021, their government remains completely unrecognized by any other country on Earth. This diplomatic isolation has catastrophic economic consequences. Western donors, who once funded up to 75% of the previous government's spending, immediately cut off aid. Billions of dollars in central bank assets are still frozen overseas. The country is locked out of the international banking system, making large-scale foreign investment virtually impossible. After the Taliban takeover, the economy didn't just shrink, it imploded, contracting by 20 to 27% between 2021 and 2022.
But the problem runs deeper
than sanctions. The Taliban's core ideology is fundamentally at odds with a modern, functioning economy. Power has been brutally centralized in Kandahar under the supreme leader, Haibatullah Akhundzada. He rules through a tight circle of dogmatic loyalists, shutting out other voices.
Their most devastating policies
have been directed at women. The regime has systematically erased women from public life, banning them from secondary and university education, from working for NGOs and the UN, and even from entering public parks. This isn't just a human rights catastrophe, it's an act of economic self-sabotage. By sidelining half its population, the Taliban is crippling its own human capital and destroying its potential workforce. The UN has a name for these policies: gender apartheid. This ideological rigidity creates a climate of extreme uncertainty. Abrupt policy changes and a justice system based on public floggings send a clear signal to the world. This is not a stable or predictable place to do business. Even a massive poppy ban, which wiped out an estimated 450,000 jobs, was implemented with stunning force, but without any plan to help the farmers left with nothing. The geopolitical chessboard. With the West largely disengaged, other powers have stepped into the vacuum, each with their own agenda. The most significant player here is China. Beijing sees Afghanistan through two lenses: a potential source of instability on its border, but also a land of immense opportunity. Taliban has been eager to court Chinese investment, and Beijing has responded with a series of high-profile announcements. The most notable is the Mez Aynak copper mine. A Chinese state-owned company was first awarded the contract way back in 2008, but for over a decade, the project went nowhere. Now the Taliban has been promoting a flurry of other mining deals, claiming over $6.5 billion in contracts with companies linked to China, Turkey, and Iran. But here's where we need to be skeptical. Many of these are just announcements. Experts point out that actual investment from China has been minimal. Chinese companies know the risks. Their personnel have been targeted in attacks, a stark reminder that security is still a major issue. Beijing is playing a cautious, long game. It offers the Taliban a bit of legitimacy and economic hope, but it hasn't delivered the kind of transformative investment the country desperately needs. Meanwhile, regional relationships are tense. Pakistan is in open conflict with the Taliban over militants, leading to airstrikes on Afghan soil. Iran is dealing with a massive influx of Afghan refugees, and Central Asian neighbors worry about instability spilling over their borders. Russia has also engaged with the regime, but like China, its support is limited and transactional. Afghanistan is a landlocked nation caught in a web of complex and often hostile regional politics, further complicating any path to prosperity. This is an incredibly complex situation, and it's changing constantly. If you want to keep up with the real forces shaping our world, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Your support helps us tell these important global stories. So, when you add it all up, the brutal geography, the collapsing infrastructure, an isolated and ideologically rigid regime, and a tangled web of geopolitical interests, the picture becomes tragically clear. The trillion-dollar treasure remains firmly locked away. The economy is showing some signs of stabilization, like low inflation, but it's not growing in a way that actually helps its people. In fact, with a massive influx of over 2 million refugees returning from Pakistan and Iran and a booming population, GDP per capita is actually projected to fall. Nearly half the population needs humanitarian assistance, but that aid is drying up, a victim of donor fatigue and the Taliban's own restrictive policies. The World Bank's baseline scenario for the coming years is near zero growth. The sad truth is that Afghanistan's mineral wealth can't be a blessing without fundamental change. It requires a government the world can work with. It requires a society that educates and empowers all its citizens, not just half of them. And it requires hundreds of billions in infrastructure investment and decades of stable governance. Without those things, development is almost impossible. The announcements of multi-billion-dollar mining deals may generate headlines, but they are unlikely to change the grim reality for the millions of Afghans facing poverty, hunger, and a future without opportunity. The $1 trillion buried under their feet isn't a lifeline. It's a mirage in the desert, a constant, painful reminder of a potential that may never be realized. For now, the blessing remains a curse.